All right, we're going to be talking about self-defense and your right to self-defense in Montana. This video is for educational purpose only. It is not legal advice, and no attorney-client privilege or relationship is developed by this video alone. Certainly, if you have questions, please feel free to call me at my office, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about these kind of things. So, to begin with, people talk about your right to self-defense. Someone threatens you, your right to respond, they attack you, your right to defend yourself, carry a firearm, things of that nature. To begin with, your right is certainly a right you have, but understand that even if you are defending yourself, you can end up charged with misdemeanor or felony assault, or even murder, and you can end up in court, going to trial. And ultimately, it is 12 people, if it's a felony, or 6 if it's a misdemeanor, that are determining your guilt or innocence regarding that defense. It's an affirmative defense. You're pretty much going to have to get up there and testify and say, this is why I did what I did. I was in fear for my life or my safety or someone else's life or safety. And the jury's going to have to determine whether that was a reasonable thing, whether objectively, and that's really from their perspective, would a normal person in that situation respond as you did, knowing what you knew at that point in time. It's one of the few areas that if you are aware of someone else's reputation for violence, knew that they had been convicted of felonies for assault, or had a reputation for beating on people or carrying a weapon or things of that nature, which usually don't come in, potentially can come in at trial. But again, you are in a trial at that point trying to get 12 people to say you're not guilty of something. And part of that defense, obviously, is to say that you did what you are charged with. If you're charged with homicide and you're saying self-defense, you're saying I killed that person, but I had to do that in order to protect myself. So essentially, you are admitting, in a way, your own guilt on that. And it's a very risky thing at times. People think they can just go about and do their thing and claim self-defense, and that's going to be the end of it. But it's not. The first layer of that, obviously, is the law enforcement officer. And they can have it reviewed by a prosecutor to determine whether it's appropriate to charge you at all. But if they decide to charge you, you assert your defense, you're going to have to present evidence to a jury. Now, you don't have to present as much evidence to them as the prosecution does. They have to prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. In Montana, you just have to raise a reasonable doubt as to whether you were acting in self-defense at the time of the incident. And then there's the other kind of issues, which are escalation or inappropriate response. So say someone punches you and you pull a gun and shoot them and kill them. Is that an appropriate level of response for that? Probably not. It's probably not going to be seen as some kind of in-kind. It's going to be seen as an escalation. And then there's the other side of things. Let's say you get in a fight and you start the fight and the other person pulls a knife or a gun and then you respond in kind. Is that self-defense? Again, a jury can look at that. You're going to have a problem with the fact that you started the fight, but the other person escalated, and whether the response is appropriate or not by you. And that's another thing to always consider, is the only person you ultimately have control over is yourself. You don't get to tell other people how to respond. You don't get to tell people what's appropriate for them to do in response to your own behavior. And so people sometimes are very surprised when people do things they don't expect them to do, because they either wouldn't or they think they can get away with being obnoxious or inappropriate and don't think there'll be any consequences. And unfortunately, in any day and age, there often are. So obviously be careful. You don't want to be escalating things. You're going to end up potentially having to explain your behavior. And again, it's not from your point of view exactly. It's from whether a reasonable person who is in your position would do what you had done. And that can be sometimes very difficult to convince a jury of, depending on who those 12 people are. So anyway, that's the end of this segment. I hope it's helpful for people. Please call me if you have any questions. My office number is 406-761-4891. And as always, I do understand that bad things happen to good people. Thank you.